Thank you very much for coming here. Thank you, Professor Sachiko M for accepting my proposal to present my research project. As it was mentioned, my research is focused on experimental noise music genre, and it is about, in my research is involved about how this form of experimental music works as a form of cultural engagement at distinct levels, tied with historical and cultural aspects that is ranging from traditional folklore to contemporary pop culture. In this presentation, I'm willing to share the core and the key points of what will be my still ongoing dissertation that will be completed by next September. And so just to recap the intent of my research. In my research, I'm aiming to emphasize how Japanese noise music evolved, not only in terms of genre, but also in terms of different meanings that has been reworked through different contexts and different times and different communities. And I'm aiming to emphasize the connection with the traditional folklore, traditional Japanese folklore, and again, the relationship with the popular culture, with specific forms of contemporary popular culture. And by doing so, I'm aiming to study the spaces, the context, and the distribution in which Japanese noise artists are performing noise music. To work on this research, I worked on an existing basis of literature review, on an existing literature that focused on noise, and also on my own personal research based on personal fieldwork, on both online and in-person fieldwork, and by meeting artists and related insiders, both for interviews and to attend events. And to shape my research, I wish to emphasize the concept of noise, but from Michel Serres, who considered noise as a form of parasite to disrupt and transform. And given its nature to produce beneficial self-awareness, noise can be considered a parasite that is necessary to create a disruption and a subsequent transformation. And conceiving the parasite as an intermediary between two different entities, a device between subjects and objects, Serres imagined how the chain of relations can be broken by the appearance of a new parasite, but at the same time, it does not destroy the communication system in its entirety. So here, in this sense, there is the story, emphasize the story of the dinner made by the rats, interrupted by the rabble noise, which two companions scurry off when they hear a noise at the door. It was only a noise, but it was also a message, a bit of information producing panic, an interruption, a corruption, a rupture of information, a parasite who has the last word, who produces disorder, and who generates a different order. And thus, it is intended that the real interest of the parasite is to create a new system through the modification of the actual system. And another study that I emphasize for my research is the one made by David Novak for his research focused on Japanese noise music, in which he used the metaphor of a feedback to describe how the cultural content is continuously produced in the circulation process by generating new spaces to act performances. Novak prefers to associate noise circulation with the word feedback, which is circulation at the edge, a special kind of being in place, and it marks the transition between something and nothing. In this sense, edges are considered limits and also shape-defining margins. And now there is an interesting fun fact about this cover, because here it is photographed an artist, Aino Keiji, who is usually associated with noise, but at the same time, he was quite angry to being associated to noise and being included in the cover of this book, because there is an aspect that I will emphasize later about how Japanese noise artists are not really too fond of being considered noise. And specifically on Japanese noise, also Paul Hegarty goes in his research, goes against any discourse about its specificity, stating how the claim made by musicians about a strong presence of a messy and complex hybridity in Japanese music differs from knowing hybridization resulting from a conscious choice to mix genres or cultures into a new and newly assimilated and assimilable identity. And one last resource from the existing literature review that I'm willing to include in my research is the one from Marilyn Ivy, which in a research featuring Japanese ghost stories, she addressed the theme of the vanishing, which is suspended between presence and absence, and can only be tracked through the poetics of phantasm, through attentiveness to the politics of displacement, deferral, and originary repetition, and placed it hand in hand with the concept of the uncanny, which is in accordance with Sigmund Freud, something familiar and old established in the mind that has been estranged only by the process of repression. I would consider noise as an uncanny repetition to place Japanese culture as a stable signification in modern times. And now that I spoke about my research, the question is, what is noise exactly? Because noise is usually considered a disturbing signal present in a transmission perceived more or less unpleasantly by the receiver, but in musical terms can be considered a musical element that is usually employed in genres such as rock, jazz, electronics, by creating effects such as feedback, distortion, and dissonance. And of course, one clear example is this guy in the photograph, which I guess he doesn't need any presentation. And but the first attempt to introduce noise as a musical aesthetic came from the Italian futurist Luigi Russolo, who is considered probably the first noise artist with his experimentation through these instruments named intonarumori. And to introduce this concept, he published the futurist manifesto, The Art of Noises, in which he considered the cacophonous noisescape of modernity a possibility to provide in listeners with new acoustic pleasures and to produce new sonic sensations through the recollection of life conditions. And this concept will be also worked later also by artists that are linked with Dadaism, such as Edgar Varese, with concrete music like Pierre Schaeffer, and also with avant-garde like John Cage. And his figure is particularly important because his song, 4 minutes 33 seconds, is a silent song, but in his concept, in accordance by his concept, the silence doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, but there are only accidental sounds that remind life itself, its indiscernibility, and the complexity and the unpredictability of life. And this concept has been linked with the Zen mysticism and the concept of mind, which sound exists only in combination with silence. And this is an important concept that we will find later also in Japanese noise artists. But the first noise experiments in Japan came before the arrival of Cage in Japan. And these experiments were made by the collective Group Ongaku, which featured also members of the international avant-garde group movement Fluxus, and they worked with by imagining inspiration from surrealism, futurism, data aesthetics with no influence in a period that also coincided with the protest among the Japan-US Security Treaty, and in this sense, this timing can be also considered as important to place noise in its disruptive, as a sort of element in a disruptive order, and because these experimentations were made with by mixing up traditional musical instruments with noisy objects such as vacuum cleaners, radios, oil drums, as a sort of reaction to preserve the Japanese culture through a sort of transnational reworking. And it is worth noting what we see also later, how one of the members, Yasuna Otone, keeps addressing noise in later works along with Japanese culture, as in the still unfinished piece based on the ancient Japanese anthology of poems Manyoshu from the 19th century. And one of the samples that I wish to let you listen is from the song Automatism, which is inspired by the automatism technique of Jackson Pollock. So later, after this first experimentation, noise music in Japan became actually a sort of a music form, because it began to have genres or subgenres that have been linked with noise. And at the end of the 70s, it began the era of the genres known as Japanoise, in which the aesthetics of punk and industrial music were somehow put close to the concept of noise as a sort of disruptive element. And it is worth noting how, again, as I said, noise artists in Japan are not very keen to be considered noise, because they prefer to emphasize their own unique performing style, and despite the harsh style, it is worth noting how it cannot always have transgressive intent, which is something that we will see also later. And one sample that I wish to let you hear very briefly, because it's very harsh, is the one from Akita Masami, aka Merzbow, who is the most well-known Japanese artist most well-known internationally Japanese artist So, moving on, right after Japanoise, there is also another subgenres that happened in the late 90s, which is Onkyo. The Onkyo music movement, that is, with translation, is a reverberation of sound, and it, compared to Japanoise, was more close to free improvisation. And while Japanoise was originally from Osaka, this was originally from Tokyo, and it was basically created in the offsite in a venue in Tokyo named Offsite, in which it was characterized by improvisation, minimalism, and quiet noise, in order to explore the defining grained textural details of acoustic and electronic sound. And so here you can see in this sample from the artist Toshimaru Nakamura how the style can be completely minimalist compared to the maximalism of Japanoise. So at this point, we can see that noise music in Japan began with the first experiments in the 60s, and it continues to be established somehow to nowadays. And today, noise music in Japan, noise artists in Japan can be somehow differentiated into different areas. The first area, one that I already mentioned, is Osaka, which was, as I said, more close with the transgression of punk culture, compared to the one of Tokyo, which was considered more a sort of intellectual form of noise scene. And through times, many other peripheral areas came up that depart, in which other artists departed from the two main areas of Osaka and Tokyo in order to build up their own different scenes, can be somehow have a different identity compared to those that is considered those that are generally considered the main areas of noise music in Japan. And it's important to note the distribution, how noise music in Japan is distributed through, is circulated. But of course, one of the important form of circulation are the live performances through venues and also through streets, as we will see later, especially with festivals, and through the circulation of physical support by CDs, by cassettes, which is, despite being considered an old form of technology, is still an ongoing form of distribution as a sort of status symbol for Japanese noise, and also, of course, magazines, and especially in the last 20 years, a prominent form of circulation became, of course, the online platforms, which we can find platforms based on music sharing, like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, based on video sharing like YouTube and Nico Nico Doga, which is a video sharing platform based on close to otaku culture, which is a part that we will see later. Also through social media, websites, and forums. And this is particularly important. This circulation is particularly important to create the circulation, especially for new noise artists, for a younger generation of noise artists that keeps going on to make Japanese noise music circulating nowadays. And since I spoke about scenes, it's worth noting how noise how venues are important to keep creating a sort of community within noise fans in Japan. And in this sense, I would like to take into account what happened with COVID-19 pandemic, because of course live venues cannot take part because of the pandemic, because live events were not allowed to take on, and there has been different forms of survival to preserve venues and keep going in touch and create and making in touch, make the venue keeping in touch with its community. One of for example, one of the venue Manamba Bears in Osaka created a collective album which featured in which it featured noise artists that are featured in the album to support the venue and provide a form of survival through selling the CD. And another example is the one from Ochai Soup in Tokyo, which is renowned for hosting live experimental music. And in this sense, here to raise it mainly relied at the time of the pandemic. It relied on Bandcamp on the online platform Bandcamp to raise funds and maintain its existence by providing with a catalog that comprises also noise music artists from both from Japan and also from outside of Japan. And in this sense, it keeps created the sense of community by these means of survival that has been made to this research funding that has been made by doing this by relying on online platforms. And in this sense, I would like to create a connection about from how noise music can be employed as a form of support to communities, and how it can be linked with the culture, with the traditional culture of Japan. And in this sense, it is worth noting how, at the time of Fukushima, right after the disaster, there has been noise artists who created festivals to keep in touch with the population, with a distinct context and distinct population, distinct communities in Japan. And for example, the one on the left, Ōtomo Yoshihide, created the project, Fukushima project Fukushima, in which he provided to create a festival and engaging the people as a form of by creating this, by shaping this event as a form of an ongoing matsuri. In this sense, it's worth noting the chosen dates of the 15 August. It coincides with the anniversary of both the anniversary of the World War II surrender and with the Obon, the Japanese Buddhist customs which families reunited to eat and dance in traditional matsuri to reconstruct a sense of public belonging. And for this festival, he also created an ondo, a song and dance style associated with the Bon dances, named Ejanaika Ondo, referring to the wild dance festivities and protests before major restoration. And it includes, and though it includes an anti-nuclear message incorporated in community dance, it's performed it's a humorous way to make the political stance sleeper in order to may emphasize more the link with the community of Fukushima, with the culture of Fukushima. And on the other side, on the right, there is also another noise artist, Pika, who was actively engaged with the nuclear debate after the disaster, and she created a festival based on Osaka to keep in touch with the context of the communities in Osaka, and by providing music events attended with debates and lecture to create awareness about energy issues and put ideas into practices as a sort of ongoing Matsuri Koshi project, focusing as a sort of thanks to the sun, and which is considered a source of energy and happiness to Japan. And it is worth noting the major event is Sen Taiyo drums Pampaku Don Don Don, a set of 33 drums arranged to resemble a sundial with 1,000 people drumming together to express the rhythm from the inside of the body to the sun clock motif in order to support the nature represented by the solar energy. I have a little video to share about it. Okay. Just a moment. Okay. Sorry for my laptop, which is very slow. It works. Okay, sorry, it's much. So here you can see that for these events, the noise music has been made in participation with the audience, who provided their own noise through drums, and this created an effect in which there is both a connection with the local community of Osaka and also emphasizing the traditional aspect of Matsuri and the connection with the nature. And moment. Okay, so, and this aspect about connection with traditional folklore has been keep emphasized with Japanese noise artists. And there are works that are inspired or are mentioned aesthetically reprising kami, the deities of natural phenomena in Shinto religion. And here, for example, here we can see that there is a mention of Raijin, the god of lightning, thunder, and storms. And the left one is a concept based inspired by Raijin, while the second one is not a concept, but it uses the statue of Raijin as an aesthetic for the cover and linking it with the noise. And there are also other concepts like Bodhisattva, the one of the uh, the Buddha who decided to not reaching the enlightenment in order to stay through people to help mortal beings. And here, for example, this is a work by the artist Kazumoto Endo, who was inspired by statue of a bodhisattva that is placed in Shinjuku or in Prefecture in Tokyo, of course. In this sense, this creates a sort of an effect in which there is a sort of traditional form of Japanese culture that is placed on an urban modernity, in which the traditional aspect is placed in the life and sound environment of modern Japan. And one that I wish to speak about is also an artist named Tamaki Ueda, aka Bane Toriko, who is a Japanese noise music artist who is inspired by the yokai, the supernatural creators from Japanese folklore, to whom she dedicated a great part of her life, and to produce her song which was made by her own instrument, made by Metal Spring, Banetech. She created a sound that is highly tactile and greatly sensuous somehow to capture the ritualistic repetitions and the hypnotic methodologies that can also be traced by the shamanic rituals of the traditional religions in East Asia. And for example, this is an album inspired by the Kami Wanyudo, the will priest that is based in hell, and again, the yokai inspiration is transposed in the modern urban society, in which noise can be considered a sort of universal element that can be inserted, in which it is emphasized noise as a universal element can be inserted in a specific context. And I wish to hopefully that we can have more luck. We'll let you hear bits of her. Have to find the correct timing for the Please. So I will not let you see also. There is also another part that I will not show you because of time reasons, but there is also, if you see her performances, you can see how she's also reprised the gestures of the shamans in order to create this connection with the form of traditional folklore, traditional religion. This. Okay. Yes, I forgot the slide. Okay, so there is also another aspect besides the traditional folklore. There is also another aspect in which connects noise with the contemporary popular culture, and I wish to speak about one of the most important noise band, Hijokaidan, who was formed in Osaka, and he is considered the most important noise band based from Osaka by combining its rock influenced wall of sound with guitar feedback, electronics, and screamings, and after a prolific activity that kept going on throughout the 80s and the 90s, the band began to collaborate with many artists to pursue different paths of experimentation, to create various performing styles and broaden its audience, or at least make more people listen to noise. And with this intention, there came the idea to mix up two different aesthetics, such as Hijokaidan and idols. And I suggested also by their fans, they collaborated with Brand New Idol Society, or BIS, an alternative idol band known for carry on the idol aesthetics along with punk attitude and extreme stance. And they released 2 albums for the label Avex Trax, which is one of the most important music label in Japan, usually focused on K-pop. And among their songs, it's worth mentioning the song Suki Suki Daisuki, a cover of Jun Togawa, which was originally intended as a parodistic take on idol songs. And curiously, Togawa herself will also collaborate with Hijokaidan and the music, and also the music video, which we will see a glimpse of it, is also intended as a tribute to noise and punk groups. Apologize for the time that can be lost because of YouTube. Time. Yes. guess can stop. Sorry. Okay, sorry again for the lag. It is, as I said, this is also I mentioned about how it is also considered. This video is considered a tribute to noise band, to noise groups. There, you can see that there is a part at the beginning which there is a colorful dozer that is crashing with some barrels, and this is actually a tribute to the band Hanatarashi, in which whose frontman Yaman Takahai actually entered into a venue with a bulldozer, and you can see how it can create some issues. But it's besides that, also another side project has been created by Hijokaidan through the inspiration with of the growing interest in Vocaloid, the singing voice synthesizer software product, in which various voice banks whose avatars are marketed as virtual idols that made a massive cultural impact, especially with the avatar Hatsune Miku, who is nowadays considered a worldwide diva. And recognizing how Miku was a hit in internet and among the otaku culture, it came the idea to create the side project Hijokaidan by using the Vocaloid Hatsune Miku to explore noise music on this side of pop culture. And with this project, they also covered they create songs that were made both from that there are also covers from foreign artists like Lou Reed, Kate Bush, and Patti Smith, and Japanese artists by tributing divas from the past like Mako Midori or other bands like Jagatara, and also covering songs well beloved. There are well beloved among the otaku fan base like Sankoku na Tenshi no Tese or A Cruel Angel Thesis, which is the opening theme of the anime television series Neon Genesis Evangelion. And I swear this is the very last sample from YouTube. Fingers crossing.
One, two, three, four.
Thankfully, this one went pretty smooth. Moment. Okay, so here you can see that how Japanese noise band Hijokaidan relied on familiar aesthetics from the otaku culture, such as idols and also virtual divas and anime to create a connection with another context that was at the time considered not familiar with noise, and in this sense you can see that also for the project with Hatsune Miku, they relied on a cosplayer who performed live, and despite noise music itself remained generally in the non-stream domain, this project were generally well received and they provide an impact among the otaku fan base, which you can see later that it's still ongoing. And for example, the legacy of these projects are other noise projects made by former idols. On the left, there is former Beast member Tenko, who created her own noise music by combining pop from the show era in Japan with music. And also there is Okinawa Electric girl Saya, who was a former idol, and she makes her own noise music by combining the Okinawan music, ambient, abstract hip hop, and French pop. And she also made a collaboration with Hijokaidan. And so you can see how in this sense there is a connection between we made a connection within what is at the time considered what it was formerly a sort of a underground element with what is considered a form of popular culture in Japan. And this is ongoing also by taking into account festivals in which live events in which put aside noise and idol. Here, for example, there is a festival, Giga Noise and Giga Idol, which featured Okinawa Electric Girl Saya among the members who participated. And of course, there has been a prolific way in which especially amateur artists, made their own noise music by using the Vocaloid, and they distributed their music, especially through, mentioned before, the video music sharing platform Nigo Nigo Nuga, which is video sharing platform for otaku culture. And here you can see that there has been platforms such as Voca Database, who provided to collect the music that has been made through Vocaloid, by also dividing into different genres, including noise, including of course noise. And here you can see how there are different albums and songs which the aesthetics of noise have been combined with Vocaloid and with also the anime and manga aesthetics. And this would create what can be considered the what I can tell it as a sort of doujin noise. Who is familiar with the word doujin is a word that was related to self-published Japanese works that may be either derivative or entirely original and are primarily focused on fandom interests. And doujin works are mainly typically amateur and derivative in nature. And though some professional artists participate in doujin culture as a way to publish material outside the regular publishing industry. And in this sense, here we can see how the aesthetics of noise are put inside are placed aside also with the aesthetics of manga, of anime, and not only in terms of the cover aesthetics, but also in terms of the music, because there has been amateur artists who made their noise music by mixing up with the anime music. Now, I have actually to provide you with the very last sample from SoundCloud, in that it works. Okay. Moment, I swear that after this sample there will be the conclusion. I have to find the image, should be this one, in which you can hear the mixing up. Okay, so finally thankfully we made it. Just let me return to the slides. Okay, so to sum up the conclusions from my research, I would like to think about how, in this sense, noise can be considered, given its universal concept. Since it's a universal concept, it can be considered a parasitic element that plugs the tradition and the modernity, functioning as a sort of point of encounter between what is considered the past and the present of the specific context of this, in this case of Japan. It can be I mean to emphasize how the circulation spreads among cultural boundaries, in which brings the cultural and the folkloristic concept in distinct cultural context, as we saw, and you can see how, in this sense, it can bring conscious hybridity, in which the past is somehow reworked in present within influences as a sort of transcultural reworking, and we can say the uncanny presence of established cultural signification, in which the past and the present in modernity, in which the past presence has been placed in the modern urban world. So, and in this sense, we can sum up by saying that the Japanese noise not only preserved its messy identity, but it also affirmed a sort of potential in which it invites the individuals to find their own self, their own self in their own context, in its disruptive resonance, while exploring the depths of cultural and personal transformation. And by quoting Mary Thompson, it is worth noting how noise can serve to startle, threaten, and annoy, and is often associated with feelings of stress and frustration. However, it may also contribute to feelings of belonging, community, and nostalgia. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed despite the technical issues, and feel free to ask any questions during the session. Thank you again.
All right, thank you very much, Luca. Okay, so Q&A is open. So whatever way you would feel best, posing your questions or comments, either directly with the video camera on or with the audio function only or the chat box, please direct them to Luca.
Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Tatiana.
Okay, Luca, thanks for your presentation. I've got a couple quick questions, more about, I guess, related to sources. Are you familiar with the work of Lorraine Plord and her book, Tokyo Listening, Sound and Sense in Contemporary City? In there, she mentions she does a lot of field work, or did a lot of field work in offsite, which I think you mentioned at the beginning of your presentation there. And second quick question also on a, well, maybe it's not so quick, but on the other end, are you familiar with Mavo, which is the avant-garde movement in Japan in the first 30 years of the 20th century? And I was wondering if that had any type of lasting impact or influence on, the sound music of the 1960s, let's say.
Thank you, Wayne, for your questions. Yes, actually, I'm familiar with both, especially with Lorraine Plurde, because I actually reviewed her book. So yeah, actually, they are both inherent in my research. As I said in the beginning of my presentation, due to time reason, especially, I didn't emphasize the overall shape of my research, but I was also highly influenced by the work of Lorraine Plurde, by her research focused on onkyo and ambient sound in Japan in the modern in the urban let's say in the urban area of Tokyo, and I was also, of course, I was also engaged in trace back the influence of distinct avant-garde movements that happened in Japan, right after. I mean, I'm researching both. I'm researching these influences both before and after the Second World War, but I am familiar, but was especially well engaged with avant-garde movements such as Mabo, such as Jiken Kobo, such as I said, Fluxus, and in my research, I'm aiming to emphasize how this provides a ground in which especially the first experimentations of noise music in Japan have been influenced to work for their experimentation. So yes, in my research, I'm aiming to make the reader, the public, aware of my research by taking into account these different influence and how they were helpful to provide what had been then reworked in noise music times. So yes, thank you very much for your questions.
I think you have a question in the chat, Luca.
Hi, Luca. Thank you for your very interesting talk. I'm just curious about what you think of the influence of noise, like music from outside Japan, on noise musician artists in Japan. Thinking in particular of its Neubodden, and the film that Ishizogo did on them called Halbermensch. Just wondering if your research is also thinking of that and other examples of foreign influences into noise music in Japan. Thank you very much, Wei. Yes, I'm emphasizing the influence of industrial music, and of course mainly from British industrial music. So we're speaking about throbbing Bristol in the sense that can be created the grounds of industrial music and but also yes, I'm aiming to emphasize also artists, industrial artists, and then up and after Robin Bristol, such as, of course, Mr. Zande Neuboten. I didn't think about the movie from Ishizogo. I will check on it to see, because it's something that I watched, that I heard many years ago, but I didn't recollect during my research on noise. Specifically, I didn't recollect this specific work based on Sultan Neubauten and Sultan Neubauten. But so yes, thank you very much. I will research on it. Just let me check if I'm missing something. Music from outside Japan, influences. Yes, I mean there are many influences from outside Japan. I spoke about punk. I also for today's artist, I spoke about Okinawa Electric Saya was inspired by French music. I would like to add about how the artist Endo Kazumoto was somehow also inspired by Bolivian music. So you can see even that maybe, of course, it can be difficult to think about, to collect, to link these influences. These influences that came from abroad can be inherent, then can be placed inherent in the music of these artists. And in this sense, it creates a sort of a rework in which noise music can somehow create a sense of Japaneseness by making a link with specific aspects of Japanese culture. So yes, it's tricky to find it. It's a bit tricky to find about it, but it is well known how despite somehow the noise artists in Japan want to emphasize their uniqueness, it can be traced. They in their music that these influences can be traced. So yes, thank you very much for your question. There's a question from July to Andrea. Ciao, Andrea. Thank you for the nice presentation. Could you say something more about the normalization appropriation of noise? While scholars like Jacques Attali and Nakagawa Shin claim that noise events herald political changes against powers, research seems to use noise as more or less another mainstream genre. Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. This was a tricky aspect to include in my research. I mean, in my presentation, because for this presentation, I was aiming to make a sort of overview in which I included the connection with noise, noise as a sort of universal element, and how this universality has been connected with different culture, different forms of Japanese culture. But yes, there is. But yeah, there are examples of noise artists in Japan who used noise, who relied on noise also to make a sort of political stance. It's or at least a social stance that can be somehow based retrace the original recollection with the I can think about I already mentioned about Fukushima. I would like to add, for example, an artist named Yamakawa Fuyuki, who created a sort of noise performances that were inspired by the traditional chant of Mongolia, in order to place it in a sort of protest towards what are the dangers of the radiations of nuclear the nuclear energy and the nuclear fallout. So here, this is just an example. I can think about also Merzbow, who is particularly involved with the environmental and animal issues. And this, of course, this is another form of political stance made through noise in Japan. So yes, it's an aspect that I'm aiming to mention. I am still not sure about the room that I will reserve on it, because my research is more focused on adding something more to the existing literature of Japanese noise music by emphasizing more the connection with the specific aspects of culture, of tradition, of Japanese culture that I think that they are not very well emphasized in existing literature. So it's something that I will see, but it will be inherent in my research. So thank you very much. And a supplemental observation. It seemed to me like the Japanese currently works on a lot of international artists to promote this. Was the cultural exchange more limited in the past? Thank you for your question, because this is a somehow a tricky matter, because there's a problematic matter about marketing Japanoise abroad, because at first, because on a side, Japanese noise artists are not very well found to be considered noise, but on the other side, they somehow allow the marketing of their music such as Japanoise, and this somehow create also some other problematic aspect about necessarily link noise with a sort of harsh or violent theme, because especially abroad there has been collection of noise music in especially in the US, in which Japanese noise music has been marketed with covers that were depicting now brutal or harsh scenes, or at least provocative images. I remember there was, sorry if I mention it, but I remember there was actually a cover in which there is a Japanese woman who is sorry for mentioning it, but it's something to be mentioned to emphasize this aspect. But yes, it's a tricky matter, because they somehow welcome this exchange despite this this stance for the uniqueness, and it's probably in the past was more limited because Japanese noise was less known or less known distributed compared to nowadays. So that's the main point of why in the past was more limited compared to nowadays. But yeah, there are many tricky aspects, but this not prevents exchanges between Japanese and non-Japanese noise artists. So yes, thank you very much for your observation. Any thoughts on foreign residents who practice and perform noise in Japan and how this fits within Japanese noise? Actually, I admit that this is not really a focus of my research, not because I'm not interested in it, but because I don't have enough space about emphasizing the aspect of foreign artists who are performing noise in Japan. But I would like to. I have a CD that I wish to share with you just a moment. Now that I think about it. Okay. So I collect. There is this artist Rudolf Eber. I don't know if you can see properly. Who is particularly active in Japan, and he produced form of noise that can be considered also in their packaging particularly aggressive, because here you can see that there is this packaging that is made by using the blood from cows, and so it's here you can see that there is an interest about non-Japanese artists in Japan who performed noise, who collaborated with the Japanese noise artists. I decided to share this funny aspect about Rudolf Eber, just understand to provide you with a glimpse about how somehow this transgressive aspect is ongoing, both from Japanese and non-Japanese artists. But yeah, there are many artists, non-Japanese artists in Japan who are working regularly in Japan, and they are fit very well in the noise scene in Japan. This is not my focus. This is not the focus of my research, because I am more focused on Japanese noise art, on the national noise. But it's an aspect that maybe I can try to emphasize more in future. So yes, thank you very much for your question.
I wonder if I might ask a question as well, Luca. So, echoing everyone else, thank you so much for a really interesting discussion of these very many different examples. So I'm kind of curious, is you kind of go through different terms throughout the presentation, noise music, Japanoise, idle music comes in as well. And especially since you have such a large kind of range of different examples, do you have some kind of broader definition of noise or Japanoise music that you want to kind of fit all of these examples under? And I think one of the kind of which you just came up with, we were just talking about again just now, was, part of the genre, if we can call it that interests you, is that it kind of links back to traditional culture, which seems to be very kind of traditional religion or religious elements. In that process, do you what is done or renewed with the tradition or with religion? What do these artists kind of try to achieve, perhaps in that kind of citation of traditional culture?
Yes, thank you for your question. Yeah, let's say that this intent made to create a connection with the traditional aspect of Japanese culture are not thought by thinking about, are generally not thought about creating these labels about Japanoise, onkyo, harsh noise, or whatsoever, because their intent is to provide, to use the universal noise element and place it in a context in which the traditional aspect of Japan goes hand in hand with the urban modernity, in order to provide a sort of link or continuity that has been made by plugging these two sides with the universal concept of noise. So the matter of label is, as I said, the matter of labeling noise or Japanoise or whatsoever is tricky, because it's more important for market reasons rather than for artistic reasons. So this is the tricky aspect of thinking about how artists are making this connection between noise, between folklore, between popular culture, because it's an aspect that somehow, or at least I'm willing to emphasize how this is an aspect that transcends from the labels and sub-labels that especially us from outside the Japan, especially listeners from outside the Japan, are especially engaged with when we think about noise music. So yes, this is a tricky matter. It's an aspect that I'm willing to emphasize, and so yeah, in some it's not something about making the label with placing the label to the culture, but placing noise, the universal element of noise, to culture, and create some sort of piece can be considered unique. So thank you. I hope that I replied to your question.